My name is Linda Johnson, and I'm 28 years old. If there's one thing I've learned in the past decade, it's this. In my family, generosity isn't a virtue. It's a resource they expect you to refill on demand. For years, I played the role silently, the dependable one, the one who had enough, the one who somehow became the backup plan for everyone else's emergencies, disappointments, and bad financial decisions. I didn't question it, not really. Not until the night everything snapped. It began with a message so blunt it didn't even feel real. Send me $1,600 for prom. Grandma says you have plenty. No greeting, no explanation, no sense that $1,600 was a lot of money. Just Caleb, my sister Melanie's golden child, texting me like I was his personal ATM. But it wasn't the number that made my stomach twist. It was the second sentence. Grandma says you have plenty. And just like that, I knew Melanie was behind it. I stared at the message in silence, letting the familiar mix of anger and exhaustion settle. I could practically hear my sister's voice behind those words, the same voice that once insisted I should just cover one semester for Caleb because he deserved a chance. The same voice that had rewritten history so many times that she genuinely believed I owed her more. I typed one line. Work for it. No emojis, no explanations, no apologies. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free, like I had finally taken my hand off a hot stove and realized the burn wasn't worth it. The reply came less than 5 minutes later, not from Caleb, from her, Melanie, pay or you're cut off. I laughed out loud because the audacity was almost cinematic, as if she still had that kind of power over me, as if losing her approval would destroy my world. All it did was clarify something I had been afraid to admit. She didn't see me as the sister, she saw me as a resource she believed she owned. That night, without hesitation, I logged into my bank account and canceled the mortgage autopay I'd been covering for their house. 6 months' worth of payments, nearly $9,000, because Melanie claimed her husband Drew had an emergency surgery and couldn't work. I never questioned it, never asked for a bill, never asked for proof. Because that's what I did. Melanie needed. I gave. Not anymore. By 8:05 the next morning, my phone was vibrating across the nightstand, over and over. 5 missed calls, Melanie, Drew, Caleb, even Mom. I didn't pick up a single one. The text came next. Confusion, then insults, then passive-aggressive pity. Caleb called me a fake aunt who doesn't support dreams. Melanie accused me of abandoning family. Drew, polite as always, asked if the payment failure was some kind of mistake. I ignored them all. And then Melanie sent me a voicemail. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. Her voice was cold and sharp like glass. You think this is over? You just made yourself the enemy of the family. Enemy, not sister, not the woman who paid her son's tuition, not the one who kept her family's mortgage afloat for half a year. Just a villain, because I finally said no. I pressed replay just to make sure I heard her right. And that was the moment something inside me clicked into place. She wanted a war, she was going to get one. By the time I finished my morning coffee, Melanie had already made her first public move. A Facebook post, vague, dramatic, and perfectly crafted to make strangers swarm her with sympathy. Funny how the people with the most to give are the first to withhold. Betrayal always comes from those closest. Lesson learned. Dozens of likes. Comments from her backup dancers, old classmates, book club acquaintances, people she hadn't spoken to in years. Stay strong. You deserve better, babe. Cut toxic people off. None of them knew she was talking about me, but I did. And apparently my cousin Rachel did too, because she texted me a screenshot with a single popcorn emoji. A few hours later, Melanie escalated again, a dramatic group text to our entire family. It's heartbreaking to realize how easily some people throw you away when they're done using you. I hope no one else ever experiences this kind of abandonment. I waited, not because I needed defending, not because I wanted someone to take my side, but because I wanted to see who still believed her. No one replied. Not a single aunt, not a cousin, not even our always neutral Uncle Peter. Silence, a silence that said everything. That night, Mom finally called. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't ask what happened. She jumped in with a sigh that already sounded exhausted. Melanie is very upset, she said. She says you humiliated her in front of Caleb and now he won't speak to her. Drew is furious too. Linda, why did you tell him to work for his prom money? I closed my eyes. This wasn't a fight. Fights happen between equals. This was a line I drew, and Melanie throwing a tantrum because she couldn't step over it anymore. Mom, I said softly, I paid for Caleb's freshman year of college. She went silent. I could hear it, the crack in her armor, the first flicker of realization. You've done enough, she finally whispered, but she's going through a lot. I didn't remind her of everything Melanie had pulled before. I didn't list the 6 months of mortgage payments. I didn't mention the insults, the entitlement, the history. I just listened. She sounded tired, tired in a way I had never heard before. And when the call ended, I sat there in the quiet of my apartment, staring at my reflection in the dark window. This wasn't the beginning of a fight. It was the beginning of the truth finally catching up. The morning after Mom's call, I walked into my kitchen, poured myself a cup of coffee, and stared at my silent phone. No missed calls, no new messages. For the first time in years, the quiet felt like peace. But peace never lasts long when it comes to my sister. Around lunchtime, I got a notification. Melanie Hill posted a status. Another one. This time even more pointed. Some people pretend to be family until you need them. Then the mask falls off. I didn't bite. I didn't even open the comments. Let her audience clap for her tragedy performance. Let them crown her the wounded heroine of a story she wrote in crayon. In the past, I would have felt guilty. Now, I just felt tired. But the real blow wasn't her Facebook theatrics. It was the message I received that afternoon. From Drew, the man who never got involved. The man who always stayed polite, distant, almost awkward in his own home. The man who carried the weight of Melanie's moods with quiet resignation. His text was simple. Hi, Linda. I noticed our mortgage payment didn't go through. Is everything okay? My heart didn't race. I didn't panic. Because deep down, I knew this moment was inevitable. The moment when Melanie had to finally explain her own mess. I didn't reply. Let her handle it. Let her tell him the truth or whatever version she was willing to admit to. I set my phone down, but it vibrated again. A voicemail. From Drew. His voice was calm, but not soft. Measured. Controlled. Linda, could you call me back? I'd like to talk privately. That word, privately, told me everything. Something was wrong in that house, and whatever Melanie told him, it wasn't adding up. I didn't call him back, not yet. I needed to think, to breathe, because I knew something he didn't, something I'd been holding for over a month, a truth I never meant to use, a truth that could destroy their marriage. It happened during one of Melanie's classic crisis calls. She had been ranting about Caleb needing money for textbooks, even though I had just paid his tuition. Then, out of nowhere, she snapped, "You don't get it, Linda. I need a break from this house. At least someone actually listens to me." I asked who she meant. She got defensive, evasive, then careless. "It's just a friend. Someone from the gym. I talk to him when I need space." "A man. At the gym." She brushed it off with a laugh when I pushed. Called me dramatic. But weeks later, my cousin Rachel saw her. Not once. 3 times. A restaurant, a coffee shop, a bar. Different nights. Different excuses. Always the same man. Always when she claimed she was at yoga, or a women's book club, or running errands alone. I never told anyone. Not even Rachel knew I knew. Because until yesterday, it didn't feel like my place. But Melanie made it my place. When she publicly painted me as the villain. When she tried to weaponize the entire family against me. When she declared me dead to her. When she threatened to cut me off. From what? I still don't know. She lit a fire and it was spreading fast. By evening, Drew texted again. "Please call me. I really need to understand what's happening." I held the phone in my hand for a long moment. Then, I called. He picked up immediately. "Linda, thank you for calling." His voice was cracked at the edges, tired, strained, but steady. He didn't waste time. "Did you cancel the mortgage payment?" "Yes," I said. "I did." He exhaled slowly, not angry, relieved. "Can you tell me why?" So I did. Not the dramatic version Melanie probably fed him. Not the victim script she rehearsed for years. Just the truth. The prom money demand. The entitlement. The pressure. The tuition I paid without thanks. The manipulation. The auto-pay I set up to keep their home afloat. He didn't interrupt. Didn't defend her. He just listened. When I finished, there was a long silence. Finally, he whispered, "I don't blame you." I blinked. "I've known something's wrong for a long time," he said. "But Melanie doesn't let me see things. She filters everything." I sat at my kitchen table, fingers pressed to my forehead, hearing the truth in his voice. He wasn't clueless. He was trapped. "Drew," I said quietly, "there's something else you might need to know." My heart pounded as I chose the next words carefully. Not cruel, not embellished. Just the truth. "I don't think Melanie has been fully honest with you about some of the nights she's been out." Silence. He didn't ask me for details. He wasn't shocked. He just breathed, slow and shaky. "I thought so," he murmured. His voice didn't break, it hardened. Thank you, Linda. I'll talk to her. And he hung up. 1 hour later, Melanie called me. 5 times. Then the text came. What did you say to him? Why are you doing this to me? You don't know the whole story. You just blew up my life. Are you happy now? I didn't answer. Not because I was cruel, not because I wanted revenge, but because for the first time, she was feeling consequences she created herself. 2 hours later, Aunt Joan texted, Heard what's going on, proud of you. Then my cousin Ellie. About time someone stood up to her. And at 10:14 p.m. my dad called. Family dinner next weekend, he said. Everyone's invited. A pause, except Melanie. I didn't ask why. I didn't need to, because in that moment it became painfully clear. Melanie had always believed she could control the story if she controlled the narrative. But the story was no longer hers. It was finally the truth. For 3 days, my phone was strangely calm. No rage-filled texts, no guilt-tripping voicemails, no dramatic Facebook posts. Just silence, which coming from Melanie wasn't peace. It was a warning sign. The kind of silence you hear right before a storm tears your roof off. But I didn't reach out. I didn't check on her. I didn't ask anyone what was going on inside that house. Because I already knew. The truth bomb I dropped into their marriage was detonating. Not because I wanted it to, but because lies don't stay buried when someone finally stops covering for them. On the 4th day, I got another voicemail. Not from Melanie. From Caleb. His voice was nothing like the arrogant kid who demanded prom money and called me a fake aunt. This voice was trembling. Hey, Aunt Linda, it's me. Things are bad here. Dad hasn't been home in 2 days. Mom is freaking out. They were yelling. A lot. I don't really know what to do. He paused, swallowing hard. And then... Please don't tell her I called. The message ended. I sat there staring at my phone, heart sinking. This wasn't a kid throwing a tantrum. This was a kid drowning. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. After everything he'd said, after everything Melanie had done. But I couldn't. I remembered holding him when he was 3, his curls against my shoulder, the way he cried when he scraped his knee, and how he ran to me because Melanie was too busy yelling at someone on the phone. I remembered the quiet moments, before he learned how to mimic his mother's entitlement. So I called him back. He answered on the 2nd ring. Hello? His voice cracked on the word. Hey, I said softly. Talk to me. And he did, awkwardly at first, with long pauses, with voice shakes he tried to hide. He told me Melanie hadn't slept in days, that she cried, screamed, and blamed me for everything, that Drew walked out after confronting her, took a bag, documents, and didn't say when he'd return. Did he say anything to you? I asked. Caleb breathed shakily. He said he needed air, then he left. Mom threw a vase at the wall after he closed the door. I closed my eyes. This wasn't just a meltdown. This was an implosion. Caleb lowered his voice. She said Grandma's dead to her now, and you'll get what's coming. My jaw clenched. There it was. The part Melanie always played best. The tragic martyr abandoned by villains. Except now, no one was buying it. Not even her own son. That evening, Melanie struck again, this time directly at me. A long, rambling, chaotic text thread. You poisoned Drew against me. You always hated that I was the favorite. You want to ruin my family. Don't forget prom 20 years ago when you're jealous of what I have. This is your fault. All of it. I didn't reply. Not one word. Her unraveling didn't need my participation. Later that night, Dad called. He didn't sound angry, just tired. So, your sister's on a warpath. I know, I sighed. She's going to blame you, he said. She'll blame you until no one is left to listen. His voice softened. But that's not your burden anymore. For the first time, it felt like he wasn't talking about Melanie. He was talking about me, about letting go. The next morning, something arrived that changed everything. An email from Caleb's university. Your recent tuition contribution has been reversed. Legally, I could pull it back. Morally? I never wanted to do that. But Melanie had used Caleb as a pawn. She weaponized him against me. She dragged him into every fight. And now he was drowning in the consequences of her choices. So I made a decision. A hard one. I rescinded the payment. That evening, Caleb called, panicked. Aunt Linda, please don't do this. I got an email. They said the payment didn't go through. I need that. I let him talk until he finally ran out of breath. Then I said quietly, actions have consequences, Caleb, but consequences don't have to define you. You can fix this. You can work. You can take responsibility. That's how you get out. He didn't yell. He didn't accuse. He just breathed heavily into the phone. Okay. And for the first time since he was 12, that single word wasn't soaked in arrogance. It was soaked in fear and humility and something new, something rare for Melanie's golden child. Accountability. That Friday, Melanie vanished. Instagram, gone. Facebook, deleted. Even Pinterest, empty. For someone who lived online, that silence was louder than any scream. Ellie called me whispering. She showed up at Grandma's house out of nowhere, crying, saying everyone betrayed her. Grandma didn't let her in. Then she added, Drew hired a lawyer. I gave him my attorney's number. I exhaled slowly. Of all people, Melanie's favorite punching bag, sweet quiet Ellie, helping Drew. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. And then he called Sunday night, voice shaking so badly I almost didn't recognize it. Dad's gone for good, he whispered. I don't want to be here anymore. Mom's losing it. I don't care about the tuition. I don't care about prom. I just want out. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Then quietly, I told him the truth. Then do better. A small broken breath came through the line. I will. In that moment, he sounded nothing like his mother. He sounded like a scared kid finally choosing a different path. And for the first time since this began, I believed him. Caleb's confession stayed with me long after the call ended. Not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't. He didn't defend Melanie. He didn't repeat her scripted lines. He didn't act entitled or superior. He sounded like a boy who finally saw the truth and didn't know how to live with it. Part of me wanted to drive over there and pull him out myself, but I knew better. Melanie would twist it into another attack, another wound, another excuse to play the victim. So I waited. And in the days that followed, the fallout only grew worse. My dad's family dinner was that weekend, and walking into his house felt surreal. For the first time in years, the atmosphere wasn't stretched thin by one person's moods. No one whispered in corners. No one tiptoed around topics. The air didn't feel heavy. It felt like a house that finally exhaled. Dad greeted me with a tight, warm hug. Mom smiled, a real smile, one that didn't look weighed down by someone else's drama. We ate, laughed, caught up. It felt normal. It felt safe. And that in itself was strange, because safety was never something Melanie allowed to exist for long. Later, while we washed dishes in the kitchen, Mom dried her hands on a towel and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. She said something terrible about me, didn't she? She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. I stayed quiet, not because I wanted to hide anything, but because the answer was written all over her face. She already knew. Mom took a slow breath. That girl has been angry at the world since she was 12, she murmured. And I have no idea how to help her anymore. For the first time since this entire mess began, she didn't defend Melanie. That said more than anything else. 3 days after the dinner, Rachel messaged me. Rach, Caleb moved in with Drew. I froze. No fight? I texted back. Rach, none. He packed a bag and left. Just left. He looked exhausted, Linda. Completely worn down. I stared at the screen, imagining Caleb, the golden child, the one who'd been raised to believe he was untouchable, walking out of that house because staying had become unbearable. Then Rachel sent another message. Rach, Drew hired a lawyer. Full custody. My stomach tightened. This wasn't just a fight. It wasn't a separation. This was war. Quiet, organized, decisive. A kind of war Melanie wasn't prepared for. She had spent years relying on chaos, manipulation, and guilt to get her way. But Drew, quiet people break differently. When they finally act, they don't scream. They simply walk away and take everything with them. That night, Caleb called again. He didn't even say hello. He just breathed into the phone, shaky and uneven. I didn't know how much she lied, he whispered. Not until she wasn't around me anymore. His voice cracked. She told me you hated me. She told me Dad was the reason we were always broke. She told me Grandma cared more about you. A pause. I believed all of it. I leaned against my kitchen counter, heart breaking a little. Not for Melanie, but for the child she'd weaponized. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said quickly. I just needed to say it. I closed my eyes. Some apologies don't need replies. And he already knew my silence wasn't rejection. It was acceptance. The following week, I got a notification from the university. Refund processed, $15,000 returned. I stared at the number, the amount that started everything, the amount Melanie felt entitled to, the amount she guilted me into paying without hesitation. Now it was back in my account. A full circle moment, except this time there was no guilt sitting on my chest. Just relief. Then came the blow no one expected. Melanie vanished. Her social media deletion wasn't a fluke. She had disappeared entirely. No posts, no calls, no texts, not even a dramatic group message. For most people, disappearing was a retreat. For Melanie, it meant she was cornered. Ellie called me one morning, whispering like she was reporting breaking news. She showed up at Grandma's house last night. Red eyes, mascara everywhere, shaking. Said everyone betrayed her. Grandma told her to leave. I rubbed a hand across my forehead. She left, I asked. Yeah, Ellie sighed. And get this, she went to Aunt Sandra's after that. Same result. Melanie's last-ditch tactic, playing the martyr to anyone who would listen, was failing. Her audience was gone. Her allies were exhausted. Her son had left. Her husband was filing for custody. And the worst part? She had done every bit of it to herself. One evening, Dad called again. She's burning through her savings, he said. She tried starting a GoFundMe page. My eyebrows shot up. For what? Emotional distress caused by family betrayal, he said dryly. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Of course she did. But it didn't gain traction. People asked questions she didn't want to answer. The page disappeared in less than a day. She was unraveling faster than she could spin new stories. Then something unexpected happened. Caleb sent me a text. Just a picture. Him standing in front of a job fair banner. Face uncertain, but determined. Under it, one word. Trying. Hours later, another message. I didn't know how bad it was until I wasn't living under her. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, not because I was punishing him, but because some moments deserve silence, not rejection, not approval. Just understanding. And boundaries. Life slowly settled. Family dinners became peaceful. Mom laughed more. Dad looked less tired. Rachel visited weekly. And for the first time, I felt like I wasn't bracing for the next explosion. I hadn't destroyed anything. I had simply stopped holding everything up. And the moment I stepped back, the whole structure collapsed on its own. Not because I pushed, but because it was already cracked. All I did was stop pretending I didn't see it. The strange thing about peace is that when you've lived without it for so long, it doesn't feel natural at first. It feels suspicious, like something is waiting to break it. But as the weeks passed, things didn't break. They settled. Caleb stayed with Drew permanently. Not a temporary stay, not a trial separation. He lived there now. And the silence from Melanie's side of the world wasn't just quiet, it was vacant. She had burned every bridge in a fire she started, then wondered why she had no one left to blame but the smoke. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Rachel called. Her voice was hushed, the way people speak in hospitals or confession booths. Are you alone? She asked. Yeah, why? You need to hear this. I braced myself for more chaos. Another meltdown, another accusation, another dramatic stunt from Melanie. But Rachel's words stunned me. Drew filed for full custody. Melanie didn't show up to the hearing. I sank into my kitchen chair. She didn't what? Didn't appear, didn't call, didn't send a lawyer, just vanished. What about Caleb? He's staying with Drew. He's actually doing better. Better. For a moment, I couldn't even process the word. Then Rachel continued. There's more. Drew got all the documents from the house, their taxes, their mortgage, even their prenup. I rubbed my forehead. Why would he take the prenup? Because, Rachel said quietly, he's protecting himself. And Caleb. Silence stretched between us. This wasn't a fight anymore. This wasn't an argument between spouses. This was the end. A clean, irreversible severing of ties, and Melanie was nowhere to be found. Which for Melanie said everything. When she couldn't control the narrative, she abandoned the stage. That Friday, Dad invited me over again. Just me. No big family gathering. Just a quiet dinner at the house where we grew up. When I arrived, the dining room smelled like roast chicken and rosemary. Mom was humming softly in the kitchen, a sound I hadn't heard in years. We ate together like people who had forgotten what eating together felt like. Halfway through dinner, Mom set her fork down. I talked to your sister, she said. My chest tightened. Is she okay? I asked, out of habit more than concern. Mom hesitated. I don't know, she whispered. She sounded lost. Lost. Not angry, not vengeful, not performing. Just lost. That woman built her whole identity on being the victim, Dad muttered. When people stopped watching, she didn't know who to be anymore. Mom gave him a look, but she didn't argue, which was new, strange, sobering. After dinner, I helped Mom wash dishes. Steam curled from the sink as she murmured, she used to say it was my fault. When she was young, every mistake she made, she put on me. I thought she'd grow out of it. Her hands stilled in the soapy water, but she never did. I swallowed, unsure what to say. So I said nothing. Sometimes silence is the most honest answer you can give. 2 days later, my phone buzzed. A message from Caleb. But this time it wasn't fear. It wasn't panic. It was hopeful. A photo of him sitting at a small wooden desk with a stack of books beside him. Caption. Started classes again. A follow-up message came seconds later. Dad helped me get a part-time job at a hardware store. I'm saving up. I stared at the screen, stunned. This wasn't the kid who once demanded $1,600 for prom with zero shame. This wasn't the kid who parroted Melanie's bitterness like gospel. This was a kid rebuilding himself from the ground up. I didn't respond, because my words wouldn't help him now. His actions were already doing that. One evening, while I was folding laundry, my phone lit up again. Another message from Caleb. Just 2 sentences. I finally understand. I see everything now. No anger, no blame, no manipulation. Just clarity. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. This was the real turning point. Not the tuition, not the mortgage, not the meltdown. This moment. The moment the golden child saw who had been holding the strings all along. Meanwhile, Melanie tried resurfacing twice. Once through a burner Facebook profile, posting vague quotes like, "People who hurt you will pretend to be the hurt ones. Sometimes the strongest one breaks first. Never let family destroy you." It got 2 likes, no comments. She deleted the account within hours. The second time, she created a GoFundMe titled, "Help me recover from a toxic family situation." It raised $30. One of those donations was from a bot. By morning, the page was gone. Melanie wasn't used to being ignored, but the world was moving on without her, and she didn't know how to exist without an audience. And I finally understood something. People who survive on manipulation cannot survive in silence. It starves them. But for everyone else, silence is healing. A week later, I sat at my window with a cup of tea, watching the sunset stain the sky orange and gold. For the first time in years, my phone wasn't a source of dread. No crisis, no manipulation, no moral debt being collected from me. Just peace. Real peace. I hadn't cut anyone off. I hadn't burned any bridges. I hadn't waged war. I simply stopped being the scaffolding that held up someone else's collapsing structure. And without me holding it together, it finally fell. Not because I pushed, but because gravity always wins. The strange thing about endings is that they rarely arrive with a bang. Sometimes they arrive quietly, through small choices, small silences, small truths finally spoken out loud. Melanie's downfall didn't happen in a single moment. It happened in pieces, the same way she had chipped away at everyone around her for years. And when she finally fell apart, it wasn't dramatic. It was empty. A collapse without an audience. 2 weeks after Caleb moved in with his dad, I received a long message from Drew. Not sentimental, not emotional, just steady. Thank you. Not for the money, not for the mortgage, not for any of that. Thank you for telling me the truth when no one else would. He added, Caleb's doing better than I expected. He's opening up. He's taking responsibility. Your honesty helped him too. I stared at the message for a long time, not because I needed his gratitude, but because it confirmed one thing. Telling the truth wasn't cruelty, it was freedom. For all of us. A few days later, my dad hosted another dinner. This one felt different. There was laughter. Real laughter. No one guarding their tone or tiptoeing around landmines. No one waiting for an explosion. Rachel brought dessert. Mom talked about joining a pottery class. Dad told stories from when we were kids. Stories he hadn't told in years, because Melanie always interrupted to redirect the spotlight back onto herself. It was simple, normal, warm. For once, my family didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like home. After dessert, Dad pulled me aside onto the back porch. The evening air was cool, the kind that smelled like cut grass and late summer. He handed me a glass of iced tea and said, "You know, none of us realized how much she depended on you until you stopped letting her." I exhaled slowly. Did I do the right thing? Dad looked at me the way fathers look at their children when they finally see the adult they've become. "You stopped setting yourself on fire to keep other people warm," he said. "That's not cruelty, Linda. That's courage." A lump rose in my throat, because for the first time, I believed him. Melanie resurfaced once more. Not in person, not online, not through the family, but through a message. It came late at night, almost midnight. Just one line. "I hope you're happy." No apology, no remorse, not even anger. Just bitterness, concentrated into a sentence she'd probably send to anyone who didn't play along with her story. I looked at the message for a few seconds. Then I set my phone down, and I didn't reply. Not because I hated her, not because I wanted to punish her, but because there was nothing left to say. Some people don't want healing. They want the power they had before the truth arrived. And I wasn't going to give her that power again. By the time the university refund officially hit my account, Caleb sent one more message. A picture. Him in a work apron at the hardware store, holding a clipboard, smiling. Not confidently, but genuinely. Caption. Long way to go, but I'm doing it. I felt something loosen in my chest. This wasn't the boy I'd been forced to bankroll. This wasn't the golden child raised on entitlement. This was a young man learning how to build something on his own. And some part of me, the part that once held him as a toddler, felt proud. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because he didn't need my approval anymore. He was finally doing the one thing Melanie never taught him: growing up. Life settled into a quiet rhythm after that. Drew won full custody without a fight. Melanie didn't show up to court at all. Caleb re-enrolled in classes and started paying his own rent. Rachel and I saw each other more often. Mom and Dad slowly became themselves again. And Melanie? Well, Melanie became a ghost in her own story. She tried one last GoFundMe under a vague alias, some plea about recovery from family trauma. It reached $45, then disappeared within 24 hours. Her audience was gone, her lies were stale, her performance had no stage left. And when there's no one left to manipulate, even a master manipulator becomes powerless. One Sunday morning, I sat by my apartment window, sunlight spilling across the floor, a cup of tea warming my hands. For the first time in years, no anxiety thrumming under my skin, no dread of the next crisis, no guilt for simply existing. Just stillness, just breath, just me. I thought about everything that had happened. The prom money, the mortgage, the Facebook theatrics, the voicemails, the meltdowns, the truth, the collapse. And I finally understood something I should have known long ago. I didn't destroy my family. I didn't break anyone's life. I didn't tear anything apart. I simply stopped holding up a structure that was already collapsing. The moment I let go, the truth took over. And the truth, as it turns out, doesn't need permission. It only needs space. A slow smile touched my lips as I whispered into the quiet room. I'm finally free.